Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. Nottingham Forest face the game they hope will preserve their Premier League status for another season on Saturday when they face Chelsea. It won't be easy though. They're an in-form opponent and they are pushing for a European place themselves. So joining me to discuss the game in full from the opposition point of view is Chelsea fan Harry Daniels. Harry, good to have you with us. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Always happy to talk football, especially when it's Chelsea Forest, two clubs close to my heart. But I will be hoping for a blue win this weekend.
Yes, well, indeed, Forest fans straight away, because people who follow you on Twitter through your FPL work will know you got engaged to a Forest fan this week. So congratulations to you both.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, more weekends of stressing about Forest wins and Chelsea wins. Chelsea wins have been stressful enough over the past couple of years, and then adding Forest in the Premier League as well means I've got double results to worry about at the moment.
Very good, very good. We will talk a little bit about your FPL work, give you a chance to plug that towards the end. But obviously, we're here to talk mostly about Chelsea. It's been a really interesting season for them. I went into the season thinking they could challenge for top four. They look great. It's been really rocky at times, but they are looking good now. What have you made of it overall?
Yeah, it's been a pretty up and down season. We looked very good in pre-season, and then like every club, I'm not going to sit here and say, we're the only club with injuries, but it's good to roll out the mantra that we've had a very long injury list. I think going into the game against Spurs last week, we had 14 of our first team out, and none of our bench had ever started a Premier League game. So we are hitting those levels now. Those sort of injuries have helped us in the past couple of weeks, actually finding a system, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But we've had a lot of ups and downs. We've discovered players like Cole Palmer that we just never expected to hit the heights that he has this season. But we've played without the likes of Nkunku, the likes of Lavia, the likes of Reece James and Ben Chilwell for the majority of the season. So, we're pushing for 6th and 7th, and you do kind of wonder what would it be like if we'd have had everyone fit for the whole season. So it's been very, ups and downs. There's been some very low points this season where you look at it and think, God, it's going to be a long time before we're back to maybe where we have been. But then it's nice to be finishing it on a high like we are at the moment.
What do you think's changed in the last few weeks and months? Aside from that Arsenal away game, it feels like you've been pretty good, pretty consistently for a while now. What's behind that, do you think?
Yeah, so as I said, we've sort of stumbled on a slight change in system, which is kind of what we used in pre-season. And then because of injuries early on, we reverted to sort of a normal sort of 4-2-3-1 that we've been playing recently. And it's this sort of inverted Cucurella who's been under a lot of criticism from Chelsea fans for quite a while into midfield to fill the place of Enzo Fernandez, who's out for the season with injury, which has made a sort of back three, which is working quite well. And then with Cucurella playing well in midfield, it allows our sort of attack to fully go and attack. So we've got Mudryk, we've got Palmer, Gallagher, Noni Madueke, who seems to have found an absolute incredible run of form for us, and then Jackson as well. Everything seems to be ticking in that attack at the right time for us. And we've sort of stumbled on it because we've tried to fill gaps with injuries. And we have a lot of high quality players with good confidence at the moment, a lot of young players. And you hear people say, oh, they look a bit raw. And that's sort of saying, well, they're not playing that well or that they're not finishing well is kind of an excuse when people say players are looking raw. But they've found it. They've sort of, I know we'll talk a little bit about the penalty incident, but they've matured so much over the past couple of games and the way they're linking together. And they just don't have a lot of fear at the moment on the pitch, which is partly because where we are in the league, like we're not really playing for anything. We are now, but if you'd have asked us 3 weeks ago if we were really playing for something, people would probably say no. We could have got Europe and an outside chance, but there's a lot of fearless football going on at the moment and a lot of players playing at their utmost ability that we haven't seen at Stanford Bridge for a while from them.
So is it, in an attacking sense, is it the three players that you've sort of mentioned there? Obviously, Cole Palmer has been a star, and I will ask you about him, but Madueke seems to have come into form, and Nicholas Jackson, we were saying before we started recording, he finished last season very strongly with Villarreal before he came here. He's a really funny player to watch. Perhaps not always funny if you're a Chelsea fan, but at the moment he looks really good, to be fair to him. Are they the ones that we should be looking out for as Forest fans?
Yeah, and I would say the other one is Conor Gallagher. Conor Gallagher divides opinions as amongst Chelsea fans. I'm a big fan of him, and he's sort of given that license to play a sort of free role in our midfield. So he often finds himself running into the box very close to Cole Palmer in the middle, which suddenly is very hard for defenders to mark. So with this slight change in system, this Gallagher sort of free role, as we saw with him, picking up space at the weekend against West Ham and scoring, it's allowed him as well. So yeah, I think Cole Palmer, Madueke, and Jackson are the three that get the sort of headlines of our attack. But I think personally, I think Gallagher has been fundamental to what we've done this season.
Are there any teams that have really nullified Palmer? Obviously, Arsenal, City, the real elite teams will, but there are any of the mid-ranking teams, maybe they man-marked him as someone stepped out of defence to go with him. Is there any way to stop Palmer, do you think?
Not many teams have done it, actually. And even when we look at some of the games against some of the top sides this season, like we've drawn twice with City this season. The game against Arsenal, we lost 5-0. He didn't play. Liverpool did it pretty well when we went to Anfield. As a team, we weren't on it as much. It tends to be how much can he do on his own when we play against teams that manage to get the likes of Madueke and Jackson out of the game. And Cole Palmer can only do so much on his own. He has games where he can carry us on his own, but it's more, can you stop the link up that he has with the likes of Madueke at the moment, with the likes of Jackson? And if you stop that, he is a great quality player, but he struggles to do it all on his own a little bit at the moment. Like he comes a little bit deeper, tries to get on the ball a little bit. And if the others are not firing, that's probably the best way to stop him.
If you take Thiago Silva out of the team, I guess the average age is pretty extraordinarily low. One of the things in my notes was around the penalty incident where fans who probably saw it, Madueke and Jackson arguing at 4-0 up, I think it was, overtaking a penalty. Is that symptomatic of a lack of maturity in the team, or is that a bit of an outlier, do you think?
I think it's a bit of both. What I would add to that situation is while they were arguing over the penalty, Cole Palmer was rolling around on the floor in what looked like quite a lot of pain, having been fouled for the penalty. So if Cole Palmer had been upstanding, I don't think there would have been the argument. But obviously they hadn't discussed what happens if Cole Palmer is not there, because it's just never the case. A little bit of lack of maturity, I think, but it seems to be squashed a little bit. It also does show a little bit, if you look at it one way, a little bit of hunger, that they want the goals. They want to be the ones, shining. They want to be the ones, getting on the score sheet. I think it was squashed pretty quickly. I'm surprised it wasn't squashed earlier. Like Cole Palmer has scored, 9 or 10 penalties so far this season. Why it took until, April for them to say that Cole Palmer is the number one penalty taker and it's up to him to give it away, I don't quite know. But it seems like it's actually done the opposite. We thought at the time it was going to be a big issue, but it kind of feels like that, Madueke doesn't look for penalties as much anymore. He just wants to run and be direct and score. And actually, he's looked fantastic basically since that incident happened, and he's been scoring goals as a result. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but the three of them seem to be linking really well, basically sort of as that happened. That was the Everton game, I think. And since then, we've looked really good. So, I mean, it was an incident at the time, and it took, the shining lights off a good win for us. But since then, I don't think anyone's looked back on it.
It's interesting, like you say, that the manager hadn't put something in place with a penalty taker to that point. What's your take on Pochettino? It felt like Chelsea fans have been pretty negative on him for much of the season. I don't know how you feel, but do you feel the tide's turned amongst the fan base with the manager now?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely turning. The big game against Spurs for us, like I said going into that game, if we win this game and lose the majority of the rest of them, the Chelsea fans would probably be happier with that than if we lost to Spurs and won practically every other game this season, because of how big that is. They've only won at Stanford Bridge, I think, once in the past 35 years now. So that was a pretty big one for him. Having an ex-Spurs manager come back is difficult. But you do look at some of the big games that we've lost, like our semi-final against Manchester City in the FA Cup and the final against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup. And we didn't lose that game because of him, really. He coached the team to win both of those games. And if our players had finished their chances in both of those games, we would have won those, and things would look very different for our season if we'd have won the Carabao Cup and we'd be in the final of the FA Cup. There are moments that he's definitely got things wrong, like selection, like sticking with certain players for a little bit too long, making changes. Every manager makes changes that work or some don't work, but things are changing. I think the big thing for Chelsea fans is we do kind of want to give managers time. We've seen so often over, at Chelsea, and I'm sure other fans hate to see it, that we move on managers very, very quickly. It did take Chelsea fans a while to warm to Poch because of his Spurs ties, and I think it will still take some fans longer, and some might not even get to that point. But there's not loads of better replacements out there for us. When you see us finishing the season well, then I think we'll stick with him. If the end of the season had sort of petered out and we hadn't have got much from it, we might be having a different conversation now. But things are going pretty well, that it would be pretty harsh on him not to be there next season, I don't think.
We've discussed the attack already. Defensively, they look like they've tightened up pretty well of late. Is that down to this change in system you referenced with basically 3 centre backs or not?
Yeah, it is a little bit, and it's just allowed us to control games a lot better. Like you see Arsenal and City not conceding loads of goals because they have the ball so much. And that's kind of what we're doing a little bit at the moment, that we're not giving the opportunity for our opponents to have the ball to create as many chances as maybe we had done. So it's definitely come as this change of system. The defenders are, defending well. Trevor Chalobah's looking really good. We're not isolating Thiago Silva, which has happened quite a lot this season, where he's sort of left on his own at that left centre-back spot with our left back up at left wing. So it kind of puts us in a position where we get the best out of him, whilst also, not producing his weaknesses that we have seen a little bit this season. So yeah, controlling the game a lot better, and a lot of on-form players, and the likes of Caicedo, who's got a lot of slack from Chelsea fans. 100 million for a player is always going to be difficult. He didn't choose the price tag, I always like to say, but yeah, he's starting to come good, starting to find his feet in this Chelsea team, and a lot of things coming together at the right time for us.
Just before we move on to any Chelsea weaknesses, a quick word for our sponsors at Trent Navigation. They are hosting Forza Fest on Saturday, the 8th of June, obviously run by Forza Garibaldi, who I'm sure people are familiar with. Tickets £15 if you scan the QR code on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can get them there, or via gigantic.com. Bands on the bill include The Chase, The Public Sport March, and Penny Moon, and many more. So do get down for what will be a good day, I'm sure. Chelsea weaknesses then. It's interesting. We've talked in glowing terms about them throughout this, but in 2024, the calendar year, they've only won one away game. Are they a completely different beast on the road at Stanford Bridge?
Yeah, a little bit. The away form is definitely not as good as the home form. Part of it, we went away to Arsenal in that run. I think we were away at City in that run as well. So there've been a few things that have happened in there that the fixtures haven't fallen. Like I think we went away to Anfield as well. So there've been a few things that probably make that look worse than it's actually been. But yes, definitely away from home, we haven't looked quite as solid. We don't particularly look as good defensively. It's also because we don't keep the ball as well away from home. I've spoken about like part of our form at the moment being because we're keeping the ball well. We're not giving the opportunity for our opponents to attack and develop plays. But away from home, the home team always wants the ball more. So we don't get the option to keep the ball quite as much as we have done. So when we go away from home, we give up more chances than we're doing at the moment. So yeah, we haven't played away from home really with this new system that we've got. So it'll be interesting to see how the next couple go, away at Forest and then away at Brighton as well midweek. But I'm hoping for slightly better things, but it is a slight concern for me that it won't be quite as controlled as we've seen recently.
So in terms of areas that Forest can hurt Chelsea, I mean, we are good on the counter-attack. We've got pace in attack. Have Chelsea struggled against that kind of team? Were there any other particular vulnerabilities that we could look to exploit maybe?
Yeah, I look at, I have to say, Callum HudsonAdoi, what I would do to have him back at Chelsea the way he's playing at the moment. He looks absolutely fantastic, and what we knew he was capable of doing. So I am happy for him to see him, doing as well as he is. But him and Alanga, when we do play a sort of back three, there is space for those wingers to go and get him behind. And then Chris Woods, he's missed a couple of chances for you guys recently, but he's definitely has the ability to be in the right place at the right time to get those goals. So I would say, yes, that pace on the wings and winning the ball back high up the pitch is another one. As I say, we're great because we can control, we can build from defense, midfield into attack. But if we suddenly lose the ball in midfield or on our defensive line, a lot of players are in positions that are built for attack rather than built for defense, because we use slightly different systems in those two. So winning those balls high up the pitch will cause us issues, especially with the pace you've got out wide.
As we referenced at the start there, you're engaged to a Forest fan, so I'm sure you've watched a lot of Forest with her.
Yeah.
What's your take on Forest and what you've seen? Because we are struggling pretty badly this season.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the quality of player is there, and I look at you and compare you to the other teams in and around there. That the quality is there. you know, when you line up with Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White, Alanga, and either Awani or Chris Wood up front, you've definitely got the ability to score enough goals to stay in the league. The only thing that, I mean, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong here, but I look at the likes of Luton, the Burnley, actually not so much Burnley, but I look at Luton and I look at Everton in particular, and I feel like they have the fight that you don't have as much, but you have the quality over them. Feels a little bit like Leicester last year, that they had the quality, but they didn't really have the grit that you sometimes need when you're in a relegation battle. So if it was purely based on quality, I think you're above them, you're above Everton. But sometimes it doesn't just all fall into place. Now, recently, you know, a good win for you guys last weekend against Sheffield United, where you did show it. And hopefully it doesn't come down to the final day away at Burnley. But that's what it feels like to me. If you just get those front four playing and playing together as they have been recently, you look like a front four that is very much capable of being in the Premier League, let alone, you know, fighting for relegation. So I just feel like it's definitely a good enough attack to be in this league.
Yeah. A lot of fans have levied that at them. There's been games where, I don't know if it's fight or belief, like Spurs away. I don't know if you saw much of that one. We got back in it. Chris Wood hit the post, then we conceded two and put in a very limp second half performance. And Brighton away was another one. And I'm sure you're aware of our set piece record. That's been a huge problem this season. Goalkeeper's been a huge problem, but Matt Sells has, touch wood, addressed that. He looks been really good. Yeah. He does, yeah. He has done a really good job. I mean, as we sit here with 2 games to go, I'm really hoping that if Luton and Burnley both lose on Saturday before we play, then we're safe and it changes the dimension. But say the relegation battle's still on the line. Hands on heart, I know you're slightly biased now, but do you think Forest will stay up?
I do. Sorry, I'm just getting exactly how many points it is between you and Luton up. It's 3 between you. Fine. So I think the benefit that you have this weekend is both Spurs playing against Burnley and then West Ham playing against Luton do have things to fight for, because that will be David Moyes' last game for West Ham at home. So they won't want to just, maybe if it was at this point at the season, they wouldn't have that much to play for, but they will want to give David Moyes the send-off that he deserves after a long time at West Ham, despite their recent form. Spurs do need to keep winning games or they're going to be, at risk of dropping further down the table at the moment. I do think you will stay up, but I worry that it will go to the last day and away at Burnley, that could be really tough for you. Now, I'd be very surprised if it's Burnley who stay up, but if Luton, for example, get a point this weekend and we were to beat you and you have to get a point away at Burnley, then things start to come a little bit more difficult. I do think you'll have enough. And actually, we've never beaten you since, I can talk about how good Chelsea have been, but we've never beaten you since you've been promoted to the Premier League. So who's to say that you don't get something against us this weekend?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to ask about before we finish. We've beaten you at Stanford Bridge and we've drawn twice with you, I think, off the top of my head. Do you place any stock in that or not?
Not massively, but at some point you've got to start noticing that these things are a trend, right? I think over just 3 games, it's not something that's a massive factor. If it was over 4 or 5 seasons, then maybe I'd start to consider a little bit more about bogey teams or things like that. I think it's only going to play into your hands. It'll be something that you're at home as well. It's your record against us. Your ability to get results against us. If it had been 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe just around that Arsenal game, I would be looking at this game very differently, and I would be pretty worried going into it. Yeah, so I don't look at records that much. I fingers crossed we come through on this one because we do need as many points as possible, and I'm hoping we get to this game that Luton and Burnley both lose and I can watch it stress-free without having to worry about my girlfriend's team potentially in a relegation fight on the final day.
Yeah, you'll have to be walking on eggshells if it all goes wrong for Forest on Saturday.
Exactly.
One last question on the game as well. Obviously, the atmosphere at the City grounds, it hasn't been quite as good this season, but it can be fantastic. It can be quite hostile for away players. Chelsea, as we've said, are quite a young group. Do you think that might, I don't know if intimidating them is the right word, but could it be a small factor in the game if it's particularly hostile come kickoff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd imagine it's going to be pretty hostile going into this game, your last home game, and what points in it will mean for you, particularly after it looks like this week that there won't be any points back for you as well. So yeah, that could definitely add a little bit of fuel to the fire for the Forest fans going into this one. And we haven't had loads of hostile atmospheres, I wouldn't say that much. And you look at some of the ones that maybe we have, like going away to Anfield, where they were really up for it. Then yeah, I think it can definitely play a pretty big factor in this game, because we're just looking to come and play, you know, nice football, control the game. And I think it could be very, very difficult for them to suddenly adapt if it's a hostile atmosphere, and you know, you don't make it easy for us to do that. So yes, absolutely, I can think you have a big impact on it.
And just one last question before we go, completely on a tangent. There's reports today, and there has been for a while, around Forest potentially moving stadium away from the city ground to an out-of-city location now after they've run into a loggerheads with the city council who own the ground. So they could move to a 50,000 seat capacity stadium out, for argument's sake. And it's interesting, as a Chelsea fan, you've been up there in the Premier League, you've won the Champions League, your current capacity is 40,000-ish, I think. With the new FFP rules coming in, it's more linked to stadium income and stuff like that, which will make it harder for Chelsea in the longer term to compete. So if I was to float to you a new stadium, 70,000 capacity, all singing, all dancing, would you as a Chelsea fan embrace that? Or are you rooted like so many Forest fans are to the kind of historic location where you are now?
Yeah, so we had it when we were linked to go to Battersea Power Station, which would have been an incredible stadium with like the outside of the Battersea Power Station staying. Personally, I don't want it. I think I like Stanford Bridge. People go there and say it's a little bit dated, it's a little bit old, it doesn't hold as much people as a Chelsea stadium maybe should be, but there's a lot of character to it. It feels like a cauldron. Every seat is really close to the pitch. It's built because it's in central London, very vertically. And I wouldn't want them to move stadium. There's talks about expanding it, which is absolutely fine. I don't mind that at all. But there's just so much character, so much history built into that stadium that just moving it, yeah, I mean, just to get more people in and sell more tickets, I don't love the idea of. Now, that's coming from someone who has a ticket every week, and I can completely understand people who don't get it to go every week and don't get a ticket for both Chelsea or Forest. I know how hard getting, Forest tickets can be. I can understand why they would want it, and why, if that's the situation you're in, you can see the massive benefit of it. But yeah, I love the history of some of these football grounds. So I'm not for most of them being moved elsewhere, particularly out of city as well. One thing, finding space in a city centre, which is practically impossible nowadays to do it. But moving it out of city just takes away a lot of the character, like walking to match days and things like that. And, walking along the Trent for you guys, or walking to Stanford Bridge for us, is just such a built-in part of it, that the community around it has as well. So yeah, I'm not for massive movements of stadiums, I don't think.
Just lastly, then, before we go, your day job is you're a full-time you content creator around FPL. People who watch this know how much I play, and obviously Mark Southerns is involved. So you've given us your time very kindly. Where can people find you if they want to hear you more talking around FPL?
Yeah, so just FPL_Harry across pretty much any social media. So Instagram, mainly Twitter and YouTube though.
And is it more short form daily updates? Because obviously Mark does Black Box and it's about 6 hours long
Yes.
on a Wednesday. You're a bit of a different kind of
Yeah.
format.
Yeah, so I do like 10, 15-minute videos about 4 or 5 times a week. So yeah, slightly different to Black Box.
Very good, very good. Well, I'll recommend it. I watch it myself. So yeah, a very good source for if you do play FPL. Right, Harry, good luck. Enjoy the game. You're on a bit of a hiding to nothing now. If you beat Forest, you're going to be in domestic problems. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. And I would say good luck to you this weekend. Good luck on the final day of the season. I hope you get 3 points against Burnley.
Thank you. Hopefully we don't need it, and then we can stay up. You can get into Europe, and we can all be friends again. Right.
Exactly.
Thanks very much for your company today, everyone. We shall be back tomorrow with the post-match show. But in the meantime, have a good day, and we shall see you soon.